Chapter 13. The Ram and the Goat. The ritual of animal sacrifice was prevalent through most of the ancient civilizations of the world.
Animal sacrifice is the ritual killing and offering of one or more animals, usually as part of a religious ritual, or to appease or maintain favor with a deity. Animal sacrifices were common throughout Europe and the ancient Near East until the spread of Christianity in late antiquity, and continue in some cultures or religions today. Wikipedia.org. Animal sacrifice.
This almost universal practice speaks to the lie which Satan had planted deep in humanity, that the divine hand is only moved by blood. It is true that most pagan religions followed the example of Cain in making food offerings, but animal sacrifice also played a central part of their religions. Like the Israelites, the Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, and others had special feasts in which they honoured their gods. All of these facts speak to us that, as Ellen White said, the Israelites were confused by their neighbours in Egypt, and the rituals instituted at Sinai were an adaptation of what they were familiar with. In Daniel 8, we read of the cleansing of the sanctuary. Daniel sees in vision a conflict between a ram and a goat. Gabriel tells Daniel that the ram symbolizes Medo-Persia and the goat represents Greece.
The ram which you saw, having the two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Daniel 8, verses 20 and 21.
This war between Greece and Persia speaks to the enmity residing in the hearts of men towards each other. There is a complete prophetic layer involved in Daniel 8, giving to us a sequence of events from the time of Persia until the start of the cleansing of the sanctuary in 1844. But the events of human history are influenced by the hidden work of good and evil angels. Christ is directing the good angels, and Satan is directing the evil ones. We are familiar with the principle of stepping past the visible into the invisible layer in places such as Revelation 12.
And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. Revelation 12, verses 3 and 4, NKJV.
The visible meaning of this passage depicts the dragon as Rome in the person of Herod, who was under Roman control, and his plan to kill Christ when he was born. The casting of the stars to the ground refers to many of Israel's leaders being persecuted and killed at this time. See how Uriah Smith interprets this.
The dragon drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven. If the 12 stars with which the woman is crowned, here used symbolically, denote the 12 apostles, then the stars thrown down by the dragon before his attempt to destroy the man-child or before the Christian era may denote a part of the rulers of the Jewish people. Uriah Smith, Daniel and Revelation.
Uriah Smith describes the visible events, but these verses also describe the original war in heaven.
When Satan became disaffected in heaven, he did not lay his complaint before God and Christ, but he went among the angels who thought him perfect and represented that God had done him injustice in preferring Christ to himself. The result of this misrepresentation was that through their sympathy with him, 1/3 of the angels lost their innocence, their high estate, and their happy home. Satan is instigating men to continue on earth the same work of jealousy and evil, surmising that he commenced in heaven. Testimonies, Volume 5, page 291.1.
So Revelation 12 verses 2 and 3 speaks not only to the visible casting down of the leaders of Israel by Rome 2,000 years ago, but also to the invisible history of Satan, the dragon casting down 1/3 of the angels of heaven in the beginning. We see a similar principle in the book of Ezekiel, where the prophet describes the king of Tyre.
The word of the Lord came to me again, saying, Son of man, say to the prince of Tyre, Thus says the Lord God, because your heart is lifted up, and you say, I am a god. God, I sit in the seat of gods, in the midst of the seas. Yet you are a man, and not a god, though you set your heart as the heart of a god. Behold, you are wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that can be hidden from you. With your wisdom and your understanding, you have gained riches for yourself, and gathered gold and silver into your treasuries. By your great wisdom in trade, you have increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, because you have set your heart as the heart of a god. Ezekiel 28, verses 1-6, NKJV.
The rest of Ezekiel 28 gives a description of the activities of Satan and his end. But the visible layer shows Satan's work through the king of Tyre. The invisible layer reveals the work of Satan. When we consider the term Prince of Tyre and compare it to events happening in the book of Daniel, we see something very interesting.
Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. While he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand, and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, Michael, first of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Daniel 10 verses 10-13, NKJV.
Gabriel came to Daniel to explain things to him. He explains that he was detained from coming to him by the prince of the kingdom of Persia, but that Michael, who is Christ, helped him. Therefore the prince of the kingdom of Persia was Satan working through the Persian king, but Michael and Gabriel overcome Satan in order to encourage the king to let Israel go back to their homeland.
While Satan was striving to influence the highest powers in the kingdom of Medo-Persia to show disfavor to God's people, angels worked in behalf of the exiles. The controversy was one in which all heaven was interested. Through the prophet Daniel, we are given a glimpse of this mighty struggle between the forces of good and the forces of evil. For 3 weeks, Gabriel wrestled with the powers of darkness, seeking to counteract the influences at work on the mind of Cyrus. And before the contest closed, Christ himself came to Gabriel's aid. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, Gabriel declares. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Daniel 10 verse 13. All that heaven could do in behalf of the people of God was done. The victory was finally gained. The forces of the enemy were held in check all the days of Cyrus and all the days of his son Cambyses, who reigned about 7.5 years. Prophets and Kings, page 571.2.
Satan is the prince of this world, but Christ is the prince of the kings of the earth. Revelation 1:5. Satan has usurped the authority of Jesus in the kingdoms of this world, but Christ is the rightful ruler. So although Satan was controlling Persia, in the events of Daniel 8, Christ was guiding the king to allow Israel to return to their home. Isaiah prophesied of the work of Christ through Cyrus, the king of Persia.
Who says of Cyrus, He is my shepherd, and he shall perform all my pleasure, saying to Jerusalem, You shall be built, and to the temple, Your foundation shall be laid. Isaiah 44, verse 28, NKJV.
The psalmist says, The Lord is my shepherd, And Christ tells us himself,
I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known by my own. John 10, verse 14.
In another parallel, we notice a comparison between the work of John the Baptist in preparing the way for Christ, the Anointed One to come, and what God does for Cyrus in destroying Babylon.
Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have held, to subdue nations before him, and loose the armor of kings, to open before him the double doors, so that the gates will not be shut. I will go before you, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of bronze, and cut the bars of iron. Isaiah 45, verses 1 and 2. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Isaiah 40, verses 3 to 5, NKJV.
The events of Cyrus conquering Babylon by diverting the Euphrates River in order to enter the city are used in the language of the 7 last plagues to prepare the way for the kings of the east, a reference to the return of Christ.
Then the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. Revelation 16, verse 12.
Persia delivered Israel from their slavery to Babylon, eventually encouraging and supporting them to re-establish their homeland. All of these parallels connect the symbol of the ram to the work of Christ. The symbolism of the goat connects naturally to Azazel, the scapegoat used in the service on the Day of Atonement. Most versions leave the Hebrew word for scapegoat, Azazel, untranslated, since there is no unanimity of opinion in regard to its meaning. Many modern scholars hold with the Jews that Azazel denotes a personal, wicked, superhuman spirit, and nearly all agree that its root meaning is one who removes, a remover, specifically one who removes by a series of acts. Others suggest that it is a combination of ez, goat, and azel, to go away, to depart.
As one goat is for the Lord, a personal being, so the other goat must also be for a personal being, and as they are evidently antithetical, the most consistent view would be that Azazel stands in opposition to the Lord, and hence can be no other than Satan. SDA Bible Commentary on Leviticus 16:8.
The symbolism of the 2 goats takes us to the events of Calvary when Israel was asked by Rome to choose between Christ and Barabbas. Christ was sacrificed, and Barabbas was led away, but was not killed. Christ is symbolized as the slain goat because he was made sin for us. He was killed according to Satan's justice system. When we read the prophecies of Daniel, we see the visible events described as prophecies of human events. But these events are controlled by the spiritual world. Behind the visible is the invisible, and therefore the war that Satan began in heaven is revealed by the events of human history, where Satan continued his warfare on earth.
The warfare against God's law commenced in heaven. Satan was determined to bring God to his ideas, his way, to force him to change the law of his government. This was the cause of the war in heaven. Satan worked upon the sympathies of the angelic host by his deceptive attitude, but he was expelled from heaven, and now he is determined to carry out on this earth the plans he instituted in heaven. 12. Manuscript Release, page 37.1.
Just as we saw in Revelation 12 that the events relating to the Jewish leaders being cast down just before the time of Christ gave us a window into the original war in heaven, so also the events of Daniel 8 give us a window into the original war in heaven through the war between Medo-Persia and Greece. This is where an understanding of the divine pattern becomes a powerful tool to bring light to the books of Daniel and Revelation. The invisible is revealed through the visible. The war on earth depicted in Daniel and Revelation are a revelation of the war in heaven and the issues at stake in this war.